My name is Mariya, and I'm a technical program manager here at Google. And with me is Krishna, who does product management. We both work on the developer platform called Actions on Google. And in this session, we'll discuss how you can create actions for your existing Android apps. And then we'll talk about how you can leverage those actions to build deeper integrations with the Google Assistant so that you can reach more users on your devices.
Great. Everybody is here bright and energetic in the morning. All right, let's have a quick show of hands first. How many of you attended the App Actions session on Tuesday? All right, I see a few hands. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about how you can enable actions on your Android apps and how you can make them surface across various touch points in the Android platform. If that sounds interesting, we had this very detailed session 2 days ago, which had a lot of code samples, etc. So I would definitely request you to take a look at those code samples at that video. And we also have an office hours immediately after that, so you can come and ask us for questions. So we're going to provide a quick recap on app actions and Android apps. Then we're going to talk a little bit about how you as Android developers can use the same development mechanism that you use for app actions to basically create conversational actions to take your services to the plethora of new smart devices coming out. OK? So that's the agenda for today. But let's start with what are actions. Our devices are our portal to the world. We do everything with them. We watch videos, we consume content, we navigate the world using our devices. And there are two primary critical user needs for how people use devices. One is they actually consume content, and that includes everything from listening to music, to watching videos, to getting your best recipes, etc. The other is we use our devices to get things done. The world has changed, right? Like you're no more running back to your desktop to find maps or to book a piece, or to book a ticket or to purchase something online. You use your device. It's our single portal to the world. However, there are something like 2 million Android apps out there, and there's probably like several hundred millions of websites. That's awesome. That gives the users enormous choice and possibilities. But that can also be a little bit overwhelming. Just try thinking immediately of like, which app do I immediately use to find the best fish taco in San Diego? Right? There's just a lot of apps out there. And for you as a developer, it's even more problematic because it causes problems of discovery and re-engagement. So there was a statistic in Android Authority in March 2016 that 77% of users don't use the app within 3 days of installation. That's crazy. And that number goes up to 90% within a month. So in this very crowded space, it's hard to get this re-engagement. And you're developing all these cool new features, but even though the user might have installed your app, they just don't know what's going on. They don't know what are the new capabilities of the app. So we are providing a sneak peek on what we call as app actions. Dave Burke mentioned this in the consumer keynote today, or a couple of days ago. And app actions is a way for you as Android developers to surface the capabilities of your app and bring that up so that Google can surface your capabilities, your actions, and your content across many different touch points across the Android platform. As the Android platform evolves to an AI-first world, we are moving from just predicting the next app to predicting the next action that the user might take, and we will surface the capabilities of your app at just the right moment, either based on the user context, the user routine, or based on things like the user query. So this gives you instant increase in both reach and re-engagement. But how does this all work? How does this show up in the Android platform? Let's start with Google Assistant, which everybody is interested in. You can, with app actions, you can basically get your Android apps to have a basic integration and shortcut with the Google Assistant for task-based queries. So in this particular scenario, the user has asked something like, manage my budget. And that immediately brings up the Mint app straight to the budget page. How is this done? It is because the Mint app, in this example, has registered for an intent of budget management in this file called as actions.xml. And we'll go through a lot more in detail of how exactly you register for intents. This also works for content-based queries. So I have asked, what is Lady Gaga's real name? And believe it or not, I actually didn't know till now. Stefania. OK. We now try to understand and predict what is the next follow-on action that the user might do. If I'm basically searching for Lady Gaga, I think it's a natural conclusion that I might want to listen to her latest album, or watch a video, or buy tickets for our concerts. So we try to predict the next action and show that as suggestion chips down in the bottom. Clicking on any of those suggestion chips immediately opens the appropriate Android app straight to the Lady Gaga page. Just think about what a good, how many steps you're saving here. You're not rummaging through your app drawer to find out the app. Then you're not typing Lady Gaga there again. And then you're not trying to find out what. All of this happens magically so that it just surfaces up across the Android platform. We're also exploring how we can actually surface apps that you use a lot directly in Google search. So I use Fandango to book tickets. So if I type a movie like Avengers, it shows me various suggestion chips for Fandango right at the bottom. So clicking on any of those suggestion chips will basically take me directly into Fandango, where I can immediately purchase a ticket. As Android evolves, last year in Android O, we brought up this concept of predicting the next app that you might use. That is the top column top row that you see there. This actually had a 60% prediction accuracy rate and was wildly successful. Now what we are doing is actually moving from predicting the next app to predicting the next action that you might do. So in this blue highlighted column there, you see basically two suggestions. And these are two suggestions that happen in my phone at around 5 to 5:30 in the evening. And this is based on the frequency of usage for various tasks and actions I do. So here's my routine. At 5 o'clock, I call my spouse, Mona, wife, and then I argue with her as to who has to pick up the kids. I inevitably lose that argument, and then I navigate to my kids' school to pick up the kids. So those two suggestions, those two actions happen very often, and therefore it is shown up as suggestions. Now, these suggestions are contextual and routine-based. So for example, if you live in San Francisco and you use the transit app at the transit station, when you approach the transit station, it knows that particular context, and it will automatically show a suggestion for the transit app. And those are the types of predictions that we can do based on many different inputs of context and routines. We are also directly working with app actions in things like Smart Select. So in an email or in the browser, if I choose a piece of text, what happens is that smart text selection uses machine learning to predict the full entity. So if I click on floor in this particular example, it basically selects the whole floor and water, which is a restaurant, and shows me the action for reserving a table using OpenTable. Now, when I click on OpenTable, it immediately takes me to the OpenTable's floor and water page, where basically I can book the table immediately. So these are all ways in which app actions surface across many different places for the apps that you have installed on your device, which thus leads to more re-engagement because we understand the type of capabilities that your apps have and continue to expand upon. But what about apps which are not installed? App Actions also shows up on the Play Store page. In the Play Store page, if I type and query, Lady Gaga, flight tickets, it shows me various actions that apps have, both for apps that are installed on my device and apps which are not installed. This allows for great discovery because you actually understand the capabilities of the apps that can actually directly act upon the query that you have provided. In this case of Lady Gaga, you get like a bunch of suggestions for apps which can do everything from play music to show lyrics. And if that particular show lyrics app is not installed, when I click on it, it will basically give me the option to install that app, and then it will directly take me to the deep link for Lady Gaga. Now, App Actions is very interesting. This is part of the larger Actions on Google framework. So we have created a common development mechanism which includes built-in intents, which is how you actually show the capabilities of your app. That is the API to show the capabilities of your app. And that same built-in intent mechanism can be used for app actions, conversational actions, vertical programs, and so on and so forth. We have created a foundation layer that enables you to create actions across multiple platforms, operating systems, and surfaces. We'll go a lot more into that.
Great. So those were some really cool examples of how the actions of your Android app can be featured in suggestions across the Android surfaces. Now let's take a look at some of the steps of creating app actions to achieve just that. So first, using tools you're all familiar with for building and publishing Android apps, namely the Android Studio and the Play Developer Console, you'll create an Actions XML file. And this is the central place for all of the actions that your Android app can support. There are two key pieces of information that you'll need to provide for each action, and that is the intent and the fulfillment, which describes the what and the how of your actions. So let's dive deeper into some of these concepts, and we'll start with built-in intents, which is how you indicate what your action does. My team at Google has built and published a catalog of built-in intents, and as Krishna mentioned, this is one of the core foundational elements of app actions. If you think about the way users ask for information, there's a myriad of linguistic variations that they can use to construct their query. So for example, they can say calming activities, or they can say breathing exercises to relax about my presentation, or they can ask for 10-minute meditation techniques. All of these queries, they indicate that the user would like to de-stress or they'd like to calm down. So we've designed built-in intents in such a way that they abstract away all of the natural linguistic variations, and we pass on only the relevant information to your application from the user's query using parameters. And so to give Google a deep understanding of what your Android app can do, what you need to do is register for the relevant built-in intents that are relevant to your app. And this will help Google show the right actions to users at the right time. Here are some of the intents that we're working on now, and the ones that have a star next to them are available for developers to try out today in preview. And throughout the remainder of the year, we'll be continuously extending this catalog to cover as many of your use cases as we can. And if you have an Android app where we're not covering the use case currently, please do give us feedback. We take it very seriously, and we'll show you how to do that at the end of this talk. Now let's talk about fulfillment, which describes how a user would invoke a specific action within your app. So when users express an action that they'd like to accomplish, a task or an intent that they have, you can help them fulfill that action by specifying deep links into your Android app. So in your Actions XML, you can define the mapping between the built-in intents and that deep link URL. And this will enable Google to show the right content to your users from your Android app and deep link them directly into the experience that they seek in that specific moment. So we have two models for fulfillment. In the first model, which is the URL template model, we construct the deep link URL based on the user's query parameters. And your Actions XML will tell us how to map the parameters from the built-in intent to the URL parameters. And this model is ideal for action-centric apps with deep link APIs. And in the content-driven model, we discover the fulfillment URL through your web content or the structured data that you give us. And then based on the user's query, we find the relevant content and then use your Actions XML to connect the content to the appropriate intent. So let's see an example of how this would work. And we'll use the Coursera Android app, and we'll show you how they registered for the action of take course. And the reason that they want to do this is so that when a user comes to the Android and they want to know information about courses or education, we can ensure that the Coursera app is shown to them as a suggestion. And for this demo, we'll also show you how the suggestion will show up on the Google Assistant. So for the built-in intent, we created one, and it's called Take Course. And it takes a single parameter of the type course. And this is the parameter that if you were to register for this particular intent, you would need to handle it from the user's query. And so, for example, the user might say, take a machine learning course with Coursera. And the assistant will know that machine learning is of type course.name. Or if they ask for find data science courses on Coursera, the assistant will match the data science parameter to the correct type of course.name.about, because that's what the course is about. Now, you might wonder, how does Google exactly know this particular mapping? So in Coursera's case, each course page is annotated with schema.org markup. And there's a page called machine learning, and it is associated with a specific URL. So this is an example of the content-based fulfillment that we talked about a couple of slides back. And so to bring these two things together, we have our actions XML, and we tie these two things together in a really simple way. So first, you register for the built-in intent of take course, and then we take the course parameter and map it to the main web page URL for Coursera for learning. And that's it. It is that simple. So let's now see how this app action will show up on my Pixel device in the assistant. So let's go to the assistant. And we'll ask it about machine learning. Machine learning. Great. So what we see here is a basic card about machine learning from the assistant. But now, below in the suggestions, we see the take course action that we just created. And we know that it's from Coursera because of the app's icon. Now let's see what happens when I tap into it. Awesome. So it takes me to the Coursera app, directly into the machine learning course page that I just asked about. And from here, I can do things like enroll, and I can also explore the rest of my app. So as a user, that was really refreshing about how quick and simple that experience was for me. In just 2 taps, I was able to enroll for my course right away. And for Coursera, it was also fairly simple, right? Just by creating a single Actions XML file, Coursera can now get users to discover and re-engage with their Android app across multiple touchpoints on the Android device. But there's one caveat here. This will only work on Android devices. Today, we know that users are beginning to increasingly turn to new device types to accomplish their daily tasks. And so in this next part, we'll talk about how you can go beyond Android and how you can reach these users that are using these new devices that don't run the Android.
Thanks, Mariya. That was very cool. Just a single file, actions.xml, and you can get your actions surfacing up in various touch points across the operating system. Works great for Android devices, and you can bring up the content and capabilities of your app. But what about all these other devices which are coming up in the market? You cannot go to an electronics store without seeing smart speakers, smart TVs, smart displays, smart whatever, right? And all of these are Google Assistant enabled, but these are not Android devices, or at least many of them are not Android devices. How do you, as a service provider, bring your services, bring your functionality to all these new devices? And first of all, as an Android developer, why should you even care about that? Let's talk a little bit about that. So Google has been doing a bunch of user research on how people interact, get information, and get their tasks done throughout the day. And our research has shown that the way people interact to accomplish their tasks throughout the day are very different, and the type of tasks that they do is also very different. For example, in the morning, when you're quickly cooking breakfast and you're in a rush to get out, you might quickly catch up on news, find the traffic, find the weather, check your calendar, and then rush out. And when you're commuting, you might be checking the news or listening to music, navigating. And that's very different from when you're at home in the evening, relaxing, cooking dinner, watching the TV with your family, and you want to find out the latest Buzz Netflix show, right? The types of devices you use is different. The types of information that you want to get is very different. in the context that you're in, you're relaxing on the couch or you're driving, those contexts are also very different. And increasingly, users are starting to use many different types of devices. When you're cooking breakfast, when your hands are tied, when your hands are greasy, you don't necessarily want to pull out your phone, your brand new, spanking new, costly phone. And when you're commuting, you might want to get some information on the latest score, what is your day's, how does your day look like, but your hands are busy, or at least you shouldn't be using your Android phone in those contexts. When you're going for a jog, you might want to check your calories, or you might want to check the steps that you've done, but again, you may not necessarily be carrying out your phone. And finally, when you're in front of the TV and want to get the latest Netflix show, the phone may not be necessarily the best context. Users are increasingly becoming more sophisticated on how they interact with devices, and they expect that their devices will provide the right information to them, as well as help them accomplish their tasks in the most hassle-free and the most natural way possible. They don't want to contort themselves into trying to use a device where it's not the right for that particular context. And Google Assistant has been spending a lot of time thinking of these critical user journeys and being there for the user in all of these contexts. Google Assistant enables you to interact with users in completely new ways, using a combination of voice, rich UI, cards UI, and many sort of these intermodal behaviors. It enables you to create fundamentally new experiences, thus reaching and engaging your users in a different way for these different contexts. And the Google Assistant is now on across 500 million plus devices, everything from phones to smart speakers to smart TVs to smart displays and headphones, so that you can reach your user in the right context, in the right place where they are, so that increase your breadth of adoption of your services across all of these different contexts. Now, making a conversational response interaction seems complex, but we have built a cutting-edge technology stack to take away a lot of that complexity. We have built all this natural language processing, individual voice recognition, machine learning algorithms for inflection, et cetera, different voice types, and using Google's core assets in the knowledge graph, identity, payments, and put together a technology stack so that we can make it easier for you as developers. Like, can you imagine building all of this infrastructure by yourself for every single app? It's just not feasible. So we have built this technology stack, and we invite you to build on top of our technology stack and focus on building compelling new experiences for your users. Conversational actions are, again, part of the larger Google framework. You will use the same intents that Mariya talked about, the built-in intents that Mariya talked about, that you use for app actions, also for conversational actions. And during the rest of this session, we will see some of the foundational elements that enable your Android apps and services to work more seamlessly with your conversational actions. But you're probably thinking now, oh man, this Google, they're asking me to rebuild my whole app for voice. Come on. Okay? So I'm not asking you to rebuild or replicate your whole app. I want to bring this concept of a companion conversational action. A companion action is basically providing a snippet of information or helping the user complete a specific task that the user might use of your service in a different context. The best way to think about this is through an example. Let us take the case of GoalAlert. GoalAlert is a pretty popular soccer app which has rich information on teams in Europe, league tables, points, all of that good stuff. Fantastic. I use it every day during the World Cup. All right? So what happens when I go to a completely different context? I'm driving to work, and I just want to catch up with the latest score as to what happened yesterday. Keep in mind, an Android app such as this, which is not part of messaging or media, will not show full screen on Android Auto 2. So how do you actually get this information to the user and extend that reach to a new context? So what GoalAlert has done is, they found that piece of their service, such as check the latest score, which makes most sense for the user in a completely different context, and they have created a simple conversational action which provides the response for what are the results of the Premier League, or what happened to the match yesterday, or what are the scores. So they created a rich conversational plus UI response, which can be used across all assistant devices. Let's take another example, Todoist. Todoist, as everybody knows, is a popular to-do app. It's a rich to-do app with more than 10 million downloads. It has all sorts of detailed task information, different ways you can manipulate it, etc. Great. What will you do when you're cooking breakfast and you just want to find what task do I have due today? Here again, Todoist has thought through the critical user journeys that their users have and figured out that what task do I have due today is a service which goes across multiple contexts, across multiple devices. So they've created a conversational action to provide a single, easy response to what do I have due today. So as far as the developer journey with actions goes for building these conversational actions, for app actions, you're familiar with this. You've created an Android APK. You're going to add an actions.xml file using Android Studio. You will test it out in Android Studio. And you will publish it using the standard Play Console mechanisms for publishing your Android app. Let's take that for conversational. For conversational, you're going to, again, use the same built-in intent mechanism to build conversational actions. You will build simple conversational actions using Dialogflow, which is a tool provided by Actions on Google. And you'll go to the Actions on Google's Actions console to manage, publish your conversational agent and conversational action. Let us see how all of this works together from a high-level architecture perspective. If I'm creating an app, and let's say this is Krishna's to-do app. It's a task-based app. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put up a web server, Node.js or Apache or whatever, connect it to a database where all of my users' to-do tasks are stored. Then I'm going to create an Android app, which basically talks to the web server to get that user's information, provide it back to my app, which will render it based on the UI design of my app. The same concept works for our friends down the street, and it also works for a web-based interface to your app. When you then go to conversational agents, what you're going to do is you're going to create a conversational agent which basically will talk to your web server using the same API, same infrastructure that you have provided. What happens is, for a query of what task do I have today, the assistant will take care of all of the natural language processing, query understanding. It understands what the query is, and then invokes your agent. Your agent will then basically understand that query, and now your agent has to actually do a fulfillment for that query. So to do the fulfillment, what you're going to do is you're going to use a webhook, which will connect to the web server on your backend, and then provide the response back to the user. The key point here is that you as a developer are using the exact same infrastructure, API, identity mechanisms that you've already used for your apps to also provide a conversational response for all of assistant-enabled devices. Now, let's talk a little bit more about this foundational layer. Mariya explained a little bit about built-in intents, but we also provide a certain set of foundational elements which basically lets you create easy, seamless interaction between your Android apps and your conversational agents. Let's again go back to our Todoist, our to-do app, and let's think a little bit about account linking. You probably, as an Android developer, especially if you have some sort of service backend, have some form of an account management system. Todoist uses various identity mechanisms, including Google as an identity. And as a user, when I start using Todoist on Android, I can create my identity using Google or through some other identity mechanism. When you go to the assistant, and when you set up Todoist for the first time on your assistant, you will have to link your Todoist identity to the assistant. Once you do the linking, you can use your conversational response across any assistant-enabled device without having to log in into Todoist again. The key point here is that in Actions console, you can link your accounts so that things work seamlessly. And with one step of account linking for the user can use Todoist across any assistant-enabled device. That was account linking. Let us talk a little bit about Play entitlements and seamless digital subscriptions. The interesting thing is that both the Assistant and Android uses Google Play for inventory and order management and entitlements management. Because of the fact that both of them use the same Google Play infrastructure, entitlements, subscriptions, in-app purchases work seamlessly across both Assistant and Android. Let us take the case of Economist Espresso. Economist is a great magazine, and they have an app called as Economist Espresso, which has a subscription feature to get their premium articles. I went and logged into my Android app and paid the subscription in Android. Now, when I go to the Assistant and use Economist Espresso, I immediately get access to all of their premium content because the Assistant also knows that I have a premium subscription to Economist Espresso, and hence I'm eligible for all of the premium content. And this works reverse also. You can purchase subscriptions in the Assistant, and it will work on your Android app also. And this way this works, again, can be done in the Actions console. The Assistant first will check whether you have access to these premium subscriptions. You can then purchase content using the same inventory and order management system, and then your premium subscriptions work across the Assistant, and as mentioned, also across Android. So in all of these scenarios about companion conversational actions, these developers, what they did is they thought of this very specific use case and built a conversational action. So here are my principles for building a companion conversational action. You're not just an app provider. You are a service provider. And as a service provider, you want to take your service, your functionality, to many new contexts. So think beyond the app and think of the service that you're providing. Also, what is the critical user journey for your service? Like, how do people actually interact with your service? In what context? In what device? And can you think of new contexts and devices in which your service actually makes sense to the user? And also, you're going to expand the reach of your service quite a bit. But please do not think of just replicating your whole app for voice. You need to think of the specific service that makes sense for the user. So my challenge to you is, what are the compelling new experiences that you can create by integrating with the Google Assistant? Please join these number of providers who have already created an Android app, but have also expanded their reach to a number of Google-enabled devices by building a conversational agent.
Thanks, Krishna. So that was a really high-level overview for how you can think about companion actions to your Android app. How to really think about the experience that you can provide your users for those times in their life when their Android device just might not be handy. So there's two such times that come to my mind right away. And first of which is while I'm driving and my full attention needs to be on the road, and my Android device is usually in my pocket. And then the second is while I'm cooking, and my hands are usually either busy or they're dirty, and it's really inconvenient to have to keep going back and forth between washing my hands, unlocking my phone, reading the recipe, making my food, washing my hands, unlocking my phone. You get the idea, right? This is a normal cooking process. So I have two devices to help me in these situations. I have the Assistant in my car, and I have the smart display at home. So I'd like to go back to the Coursera example that we introduced earlier, and I'd like to show you how we help them take their app beyond Android so that it could accompany me throughout my day with the situations that I just described. So we all know machine learning is a pretty hot topic right now, and so as we saw earlier, I did register for it on Coursera, and I like to go through my courses after work. So I like to listen to the course podcast while I'm driving in my car. And then when I get home, I like to continue watching the video for the course that I started to listen to in the car. Now, neither my car nor my smart device at home run Android, right? Both of these devices, they only work with the Google Assistant. And so let's see how we helped build the Coursera companion app that works on the Google Assistant. Here's the Actions XML that we showed you earlier, where they registered for the Take course built-in intent. And now, after their APK was approved and published in the Play Developer Console, there now appeared an option there to enhance actions with Actions on Google. And clicking there lands us in the Actions Console project claiming page. Now, this console is a really focused way to develop and manage your companion action for the Google Assistant. And we're very excited because this week we announced a major redesign of this console, and it basically helps you do three main things. It first allows you to configure, set up the metadata and the directory listing information for your companion app. And then it allows you to manage the development, the testing, and the deployment process in a very fine-grained way. And then once your action is published, it gives you analytics so that you can track how your action is doing out there with real users in the real world. Now, there's a lot of magic that happens here during this project claiming stage. For example, we automatically import most of the information that you provided in the Actions XML to make it easier for you to develop your companion app. Now, let's see what the Actions console looks like for Coursera after they've gone through the claiming process. So this is the Actions console, and we can see that it's already set up with the Coursera demo app. Let's click into this Actions section. And we see here the Take course built-in intent that we had in Android that's automatically imported from Actions XML where we went through that claiming process. And when we click in, we'll hopefully see some magical information show up here. There we go. So we see all of the triggering, we see all of the important information that you would want to know about this action. So for example, the triggering phrases up there, these are sample invocations that users can use to invoke this particular action. And we've see the parameters as well as the fulfillment information that you provided us in your Actions XML, and that was automatically imported into here. Now that we have this basic wiring set up, what we can do is we can create a rich response using Dialogflow to cover those two cases that I described I wanted to have earlier for Coursera. So to listen to my course podcast while I'm driving, and then to continue watching my video when I get at home. And to do that, you would just add the fulfillment of conversational type here, and this will land us in Dialogflow, where you can specify the details about the fulfillment. Now, because we're a bit short on time today, I won't show you how you can build fulfillment from scratch, but there are a few key components that I'd like to walk you through so that you can see how to do this for yourself. So this is the Dialogflow tool, and this is the JavaScript for our fulfillment code. We see here that we first use the Take course built-in intent that we walked through earlier, and then we reference the course parameter to understand what is the name of the course that is coming in from the user's query. We also created a function that calls the backend Coursera service to get the details from the course that the user is asking about. And then when we get the response, what we can do is parse it. And for this particular example, we'll just create a simple card that shows us all of the course information. And then we use our media response API to return the audio or the video of the course based on what device I'm running on. Now, one really amazing thing about Dialogflow is that it's simply integrated with the Actions console. It has a really deep integration with that console. And so this provides a really nice development environment where you can do things like test how this would work on the Google Assistant directly from this UI just by simply clicking in this section. So let's see how this basic card that I just showed you we created would look like in the simulator. So this is the simulator. And we also have a test on device option, so you can test during your process to see how it would work on the device. But for now, let's see how this would work when we invoke our Coursera demo app. So we'll say, ask Coursera demo to start my machine learning course.
Sure, here's the test version of Coursera demo.
Here's more information about machine learning. Do you want to start the course?
Great. So what we see here is the card that we created, right? So all of this description information down here, the title of the card, this image, the suggestion chips down there, they were all specified in the fulfillment code that I showed you in Dialogflow. So now let's say yes to start the course podcast.
Sure, here's your course on machine learning.
Our first learning algorithm will be linear regression.
Great. So this allows me to listen to the course podcast while I'm driving. Now let's imagine that I started doing that in my car, and then when I get home, I want to continue watching my video on the smart display device. So let's try it here, and hopefully it works. OK, Google, continue my course.
Sorry, I don't know how to help with that yet,
Let's try it
but
again.
I'm trying to learn.
OK, Google, continue my course.
Sorry, I don't know how to help with that. I'm still learning.
Third try.
OK, Google, continue my course.
OK, let's get Coursera.
Welcome to Coursera. Do you want to continue your machine learning course?
Yes.
Sure, here is your course.
More importantly, you also see what the overall process of supervised learning is.
Thank you. Thank you, demo gods. All right, so let me jump in on a quick recap of what we just did. We showed you how to create actions XML and how to use built-in intents to enable actions in your Android app. And then we showed you how by doing so, your app can now be discovered across the many surfaces on Android. Now, we briefly glossed over these two, but we had our colleagues give a whole talk on how to build app actions 2 days ago. And if you missed it, don't worry, please do go ahead and watch the video on YouTube. Now, in the main part of the demo, we walked through how to claim your actions in Google Project so that you can enable your actions to work on new devices. And finally, we showed you how to build and test a simple companion app that works great with audio and video on a smart display. Now, we certainly think this is very cool. We're very excited. And we tried to make it really easy for you so that a companion app like this is just another interface to your existing service. Building experiences that work on devices which don't run Android is not about bringing up completely new infrastructure from scratch. It's more about just extending your apps to be more action-centric and more focused on connecting with your users throughout their day, wherever they are, whether at home or they're on the go. So with that, let me invite you to visit our webpage at actions.google.com to learn more about the concepts and the tools that we covered today. And we want to hear from you, so please do sign up at g.co/appactions so that you can give us feedback on our built-in intent catalog. And also, by signing up, you'll get notified when app actions become available. But most importantly, what we encourage you today is start thinking about the experience you can provide your users for those times in their life when their Android device just might be impractical or just inconvenient to use in that moment. Take the next step today and build companion actions on devices that work for the Google Assistant. We want to thank you for joining us. And if you have any questions, please come by our office hours in the Sandbox area. Please enjoy the rest of your time at I/O.